I feel like I married a stranger. My wife says I've betrayed her, secret families, old messages, even Spotify songs, and now my life is constant fights, accusations, and walking on eggshells. I got married in June after being with my wife for 4.5 years, and since then it feels like everything has completely flipped. I don't think I'm perfect, but the constant fighting has left me confused, drained, and honestly pretty anxious in my own home. We argue almost every day without fail, and most of the time, I genuinely don't understand why it's happening. I replay the fights in my head later and still can't figure out what triggered them. It often feels like she's already upset and just looking for something to latch onto, while I'm left trying to calm things down and failing. One of the biggest sources of conflict is household chores, especially cooking. Every morning I make breakfast, and I also cook dinner every night unless she's trying some special recipe she saw online. Realistically, she cooks maybe once every couple of months. Lunch is usually leftovers from what I made the night before. I don't need constant praise, but there's rarely any appreciation at all. Instead, if the food isn't perfect, it can turn into a full-blown meltdown. If it's slightly too salty, not flavorful enough, too saucy, or too plain, she can spiral instantly. I'm not a professional chef. I'm just trying to make us decent meals every day. But when something isn't exactly right, she'll cry, scream that I don't love her, and sometimes literally wail on the floor. It gets loud enough that one time a neighbor left a note on our door asking us to calm down. Moments like that make me feel helpless and embarrassed because I don't see how a slightly imperfect meal deserves that kind of reaction. Cleaning is another huge issue. I handle most of the kitchen cleanup every night. Dishes, stove, counters, and sometimes the floor too. She might wash dishes once or twice a month. Ironically, the rare times she does wash them are almost guaranteed to end in a fight. Sometimes after dinner, I just want a short break to sit down, maybe play a video game or watch something before tackling the dishes. If I don't jump up immediately, she'll go do them herself and then start yelling about how I'm lazy, useless, and don't help around the house because I hate her. None of that reflects reality, but once she's upset, logic doesn't seem to matter. Even when I do clean, it feels like I'm being inspected. Every night before bed, she checks the entire kitchen. If anything is missed, a crumb under the microwave, a small patch of counter not wiped, anything at all, it becomes another massive argument. This morning our apartment building staff actually called to ask if everything was okay and warned that more complaints from neighbors could cause trouble. Hearing that made my stomach drop because it shows how out of control things sound from the outside. Beyond the kitchen, I handle most of the cleaning in general. I sweep and mop the floors, vacuum the carpets, wipe down tables, and try to keep everything tidy. She usually cleans the bathroom sink and makes the bed, but despite this, she constantly says I don't do enough. I honestly can't remember the last time I felt like I could take a day off from chores without it becoming an issue. Back in October, for example, I spent an entire Saturday deep cleaning the apartment while she sat on the couch scrolling through her phone. I didn't complain, I just wanted the place to look good. Then on Monday, her mom was coming over after work. I got home first and, thinking we were already in good shape, lay down and started reading for a bit. When she came home and saw me relaxing, she was furious. She pointed out a bit of dust on the TV cabinet and immediately launched into another angry outburst about how I don't care and never help. Despite the fact that I had cleaned the whole apartment 2 days earlier, I ended up wiping everything down again while she stayed on her phone. Situations like that aren't unusual, they're pretty typical. This weekend is another example. She's going out for a girls' night on Friday and has already told me she expects me to sweep, mop, and vacuum while she's gone. It's not framed as a request, it feels more like a requirement. Meanwhile, I already feel like most of my time outside work is spent cooking, cleaning, or trying to prevent the next argument. When I do take a moment to relax, it often becomes the very thing that triggers a fight, which makes it hard to relax at all. Another thing that has somehow become a regular source of conflict is the composting situation in our building. We live in NYC, where starting last year there's been a requirement to separate food scraps from regular trash. In theory, I have no problem with that, but in practice the compost bins in our building's trash room are often missing or already full. When that happens, I just throw everything in the regular trash because there isn't really another option. To me, it doesn't make sense to stress over separating things upstairs if it's all going to end up in the same place downstairs anyway. For her, though, this has turned into a huge issue. She has actually started digging through our kitchen trash upstairs to check whether anything compostable was thrown out. If she finds something, even something small, it turns into a full argument. She'll get extremely upset, saying I don't care about the rules or about what matters to her. I tried explaining that it feels like she's literally searching through the trash to find a reason to be mad at me, but when I say that, she accuses me of minimizing her feelings. I'm left feeling confused, because from my perspective the reaction seems wildly disproportionate to the situation, but clearly to her it feels important. Still, it's hard not to feel like I'm constantly under surveillance in my own home. My work situation is another big flashpoint. I travel fairly often for my job, and she absolutely hates it. I'm the primary breadwinner, making about 80% of our combined income, and honestly we live in a very nice apartment in a neighborhood we probably couldn't afford on her salary alone. My job pays more because it comes with longer hours, higher expectations, and travel requirements. To me, that's just part of the deal. She, however, treats my work trips like I'm going on vacations without her. Whenever I tell her I've been scheduled to travel, it often leads to another meltdown. Yes, sometimes I get sent to places people think are fun, Miami, San Francisco, Seattle, but I've also been sent to places like Kansas City, St. Louis, or Boise. Regardless of where it is, I'm there to work. My days are packed, and I'm usually exhausted by the end. But she frames it as me choosing to leave her behind and enjoy myself, which makes me feel guilty for something that's literally part of how I support us. It's frustrating because from my perspective I'm doing what I need to do to maintain our lifestyle, while she seems to see it as some kind of betrayal. Even when I'm home, work is still an issue. My job is fully work from home, and she seems to think that means it isn't real work. She works from home 3 days a week herself, but still says my setup is unacceptable. On days when we're both home, she'll complain that I'm ignoring her or that I must hate her because I'm not paying attention to her during the day. In reality, I'm just trying to do my job. We have a second bedroom that I use as an office, but she constantly barges in or calls out to me from the living room about random things. Sometimes it's something small like asking me to run downstairs to the corner store for a snack, or to microwave her lunch, or to come help her with something that could easily wait. Early on in our relationship, I thought doing little things like that was cute and I didn't mind. Now it feels like it's turned into an expectation that I'm always available, even during work hours. The interruptions add up, and I often end up working later into the evening to make up for the time I lost during the day. This also feeds into her argument about chores. Because I work from home, she believes I should be using my extra time to clean the apartment or handle household tasks. From her perspective, since I'm already at home, I should be doing more. But the reality is I'm working from around 7 a.m. to at least 5 p.m., often later, Monday through Friday. At this point, I honestly feel like I have no free time at all. Every moment of my day feels like it has to be accounted for, and if it isn't, it somehow turns into another problem. The only real time off I get is when she goes out to see her friends, or if she falls asleep early on a weekend night. She usually meets friends about once a week for after-work drinks, and that hour or so after work when she's gone is genuinely the most peaceful part of my week. I can finally sit down, breathe, and exist without feeling like I'm about to be told I should be doing something else. I used to be a huge Knicks fan and rarely missed a game, but I honestly can't remember the last time I watched one. It's not that I stopped caring, it's that I just don't feel like I have the time or freedom anymore. Even something as simple as sitting down to read a book feels like I need permission. Meanwhile, she can sit in her chair scrolling TikTok for hours, but the second I open a video game or try to do something for myself, it's like a switch flips. She'll immediately put her phone down and start complaining or whining about something that suddenly needs to be done. One day last summer really stuck with me. I turned on a game, finally hoping to relax a bit, and almost immediately, she started crying that the trash needed to be taken out right away. The can was maybe half full. It absolutely could have waited, but it felt like the point wasn't the trash. It felt like the point was that I had tried to use my free time for myself. Moments like that make it feel like any attempt to relax is automatically treated as selfish. When she goes out with friends, it's not like that time becomes mine either. Usually I get left with a long list of chores to finish while she's gone. If I don't complete one of them, there will be a meltdown. If I do complete them but one thing isn't done perfectly, maybe I forget to wipe the bathroom sink in the bedroom, or miss dusting the liquor shelf, or overlook something small, that can also trigger another blow-up. It feels like I can't win. Either I spend my limited free time working through the list, or I deal with the fallout later. She also constantly says I'm addicted to video games and only want to play them to get away from her. But if you look at my actual playtime, it tells a different story. On Steam, which tracks your hours over the past 2 weeks, I'm usually around 5 hours total. Sometimes it hits 10, but that's rare. Right now it's at 2. That doesn't feel like an addiction to me. It feels like someone squeezing in a tiny bit of downtime where they can. It's not just hobbies that cause problems either. Whenever I want to hang out with a friend, it's treated like I'm abandoning her. Back in January, I went down the street to grab a couple of beers with a friend and watch the college football championship. It was simple, local, and only for a few hours. But the 4 days leading up to it were filled with arguments and emotional blow-ups about how I was leaving her, how I must hate her, and how I didn't want to spend time with her. That was actually the first time since the wedding that I went out with a friend without her. Other times, I'd given in to the pressure and canceled my plans just to keep the peace. What makes it harder is that she regularly sees her own friends and has a full social life separate from me. I don't stop her and I don't make her feel guilty about it. I actually want her to have that space. But when I try to do the same, it turns into a major event in our household. Another major issue in our marriage is how suspicious she is of me. She genuinely believes I'm hiding things from her, even though I've never cheated or done anything that should reasonably make her doubt me. For example, because I travel to Texas fairly often for work, she has convinced herself that I must have a secret family there and that I'm cheating on her with them. It sounds absurd when I say it out loud, but to her it feels completely real. No amount of reassurance from me seems to change her mind, and it turns into yet another recurring argument. Last winter, she even made me re-download Snapchat so she could go through my old messages. I hadn't had the app on my phone since before COVID, from a time when I hadn't even met her yet. Unsurprisingly, there were some old flirty messages with women in there. I was in my early 20s, single and meeting people at bars or parties. To me, that's just normal history from before our relationship. But she treated it like I had betrayed her. She said I should have deleted those messages years ago and blocked those women, and that I was dishonest for not telling her about them before we got married. The reality is I hadn't thought about that app in half a decade. I forgot those conversations even existed, and I have zero contact with any of those people now. Still, she brings those Snapchat messages up regularly as proof that I'm untrustworthy. The scrutiny doesn't stop there. She searches through my browser history, my YouTube watch history, my Instagram searches, and likes, even digging into the settings to see what posts I've liked. Most of the time, she finds nothing, but that doesn't stop the accusations. If she does see something even remotely connected to another woman, it becomes a problem. At one point, I was working with a client whose leadership team included a woman. I visited her profile page on the client's website just to check her job title and background for work purposes. When my wife saw that in my history, she accused me of cheating and demanded to know how I knew this woman and why I was looking at her page. It didn't matter that it was clearly work-related. Sometimes it's even smaller than that. If I like a social media post from a male friend, but his girlfriend happens to be in the picture, that can spark an argument. Once she got upset because a song by a female artist showed up in my on repeat playlist on Spotify. I just liked the song and listened to it a few times, but she accused me of being in love with a singer. Situations like this make me feel like I'm constantly being watched and judged for completely normal behavior. Beyond the jealousy, she's also just generally angry a lot of the time. It feels like there's always some kind of conflict in her life. Since we got married, she's had huge falling outs and is now no longer speaking to 4 of her bridesmaids. She fights with her mom on the phone every couple of weeks. She has ongoing issues with coworkers. And when those arguments happen, the frustration comes home with her and somehow becomes my problem too. I end up being the person she vents at, yells at, or blames, even when I had nothing to do with the original situation. More and more, it feels like everything that goes wrong is automatically my fault. If the Wi-Fi cuts out, she assumes I must have broken something. If the milk goes bad, it's because I'm irresponsible and didn't track it. If she drops the eggs and they crack, somehow I must have put them in the fridge wrong. Once she even blamed me for the train being delayed. I know that sounds ridiculous, but in the moment she was completely serious. What makes this all so hard to process is that she wasn't always like this. Before we got married, our relationship felt easy and happy. I loved her deeply, and it honestly felt like a fairy tale. We got along, supported each other, and I felt lucky to be with her. Now it feels like I'm living with a completely different person. I keep wondering if I'm missing something, or if I've somehow changed, or if there's something going on with her that I don't understand. I don't know if other people have experienced something like this, where after getting married, their partner suddenly seemed to change or become consumed by anger, suspicion, or conflict. Right now I just feel overwhelmed, stuck, and unsure what to do next.